Let's call the meeting to order for January 15th, 2018 Planning Commission. We're going to hear
2019.
our 20, that says 18.
Sorry.
Whoops.
Slides are on.
19.
My fault.
Okay.
Check. The staff report was correct.
Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have two members missing tonight. Please take note. Okay, first thing on the agenda is approval of the meetings of December 18th, 2018. Any comments? I would entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the minutes as recorded here in our minutes.
I have a motion.
Second.
And a second. Comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Tonight we're holding a public hearing regarding a land petition number PA 1806. The meeting will proceed as follows. The required disclosure will be read. Staff will make a presentation, followed by the applicant, and then anyone else who wishes to speak. Any members of the audience that wish to speak must sign in and testify, and the commissioners may ask questions. I now call that public hearing to order. Jake, would you read the disclosure statement, please?
Yes, I will. All persons testifying will be deemed parties of the application and must provide their full name and full mailing address. The city zoning code specifies applicable criteria to be relied upon in making those decisions, or making a decision. Those criteria and findings of fact are in the city staff report. Public testimony should be limited to the criteria and findings of fact, or to the other city or state land use standards that the person testifying believes apply to the proposed land use action. Failure to raise an issue in person or in writing with sufficient detail to afford the hearing body or the applicants an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal to the City Council or Land Use Board of Appeals, or to seek damages in circuit court due to the condition of approval. Before the conclusion of the initial evidentiary hearing, any participant may ask the Planning Commission for an opportunity to present additional relevant evidence or testimony that is within the scope of the hearing. The hearing's body shall grant a request by scheduling a date to finish the hearing, a continuance to the time and date certain, or by leaving the record open for additional evidence or testimony.
Thank you. Questions for the commission? Does any member of the commission wish to declare a potential or actual conflict of interest? Do any members of the commission wish to report any site visits or ex parte contact?
I drove by.
Site visit, the address on this front sheet is, both of those addresses are wrong.
Okay, take note.
FYI.
Take notes.
Does any member of the audience wish to challenge the jurisdiction of the commission to hear this matter? Does any member of the audience wish to challenge the impartiality or ex parte disclosure of any member of the commission? If not, then we will ask for the staff report from Mr. Straight, please.
Thank you, Chairman, fellow commissioners. Matt Straight presenting tonight for staff. The project before you is located in south of Millersburg Drive, near Noel Lane, kind of catty corner to it. The site is zoned rural residential, 10-acre urban conversion. The applicant is proposing a 3-lot partition of 9.51 acres. Now, in order to support the project tonight, we have to establish that the applicant meets specific criteria, so we're going to go through those individually here, one at a time. The first one requires the applicant to comply with the comprehensive plan and all of the state goals Based on staff's review of the project meets all of those requirements. Additionally, the project has to comply with all of the city's codes, and based on staff's review, the project meets all of those city codes with the conditions of approval that were added in the staff report, such as the one requiring parcel 2 here to connect to water and sewer before the map records, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. The project must comply with all of ORS 92's rules. The rules in ORS 92 generally pertain to final plats and how plats are recorded, so this project is kind of intrinsically consistent with all of those. Now, I wanted to slow down at this point and go over this part a little bit more slowly because the staff report might have made this a little bit confusing. You saw I even threw an image in the staff report, which we normally don't do, but I was trying to overcompensate for the fact that this is a little bit confusing. So the criteria that we have, that we're discussing right now, explains that any undeveloped portion of the property, as you can see here on the screen, has to be able to further divide down the road. And in this case, all 3 of the parcels are over 20,000 square feet, which means that they could subdivide in the future into 10,000 square foot lots. So we had to look at that and make sure that they could divide again in the future. Now, it was a little bit confusing because there was a project, the West Valley Estates, that was approved not too long ago with this body, located adjacent to the applicant's site, as you can see here on the screen. Now, even though that project was approved, it was tentatively approved, and it hasn't recorded yet, which means that the streets in here, even if they're under construction, aren't technically legal city streets yet. The city hasn't accepted those streets or the dedication of those streets, and those streets aren't constructed yet. So when we looked at this project, we had to look at it like this, in a vacuum, as if those streets weren't there. Now, there was a little bit more complication with that because we also had to take into consideration when the applicant could possibly record their tentative partition should it get approved tonight. If it got approved after that map dedicated those streets to us, then we would have to take those streets into account. So the way we approach this is we added 2 sets of conditions of approval in the staff report tonight. And the first set, basically, if the applicant records their project prior to those streets being dedicated, then this set of conditions of approval would apply. This set of conditions of approval indicates that parcel 3 down here would take access from Sonora Drive, no real issue there. Now, to go up to parcel 1, I blew this up a little bit so you can see it a little bit better. And here what we've indicated is that the existing driveway for the applicant can remain, but parcel number 1 here can't add yet another driveway to Millersburg Drive because Millersburg is an arterial and we want to limit the number of access points on an arterial pursuant to our code. So we've indicated that parcel 1 is fine here, but it has to do a shared driveway with parcel 2, thus limiting any future curb cuts in there. And so with that, this project could comply, and should they record the project before the street goes in next door, this will work. This will meet the code. Option number 2 is what would happen if the street actually gets dedicated to the city, gets constructed, and the city accepts that dedication. And so if this happens before they record, then the final plat that they give us is going to have to show access to parcel 1 from the south, not from Millersburg Drive. And they can do that in several ways. We didn't get prescriptive on purpose. We left that kind of open. When the applicant brings in the final version of the plat, they can show the access easement just about any way they want. As long as it actually gets from the street to parcel number 1, we're going to be okay with it. Now, the main goal here is that in this universe, with this map already recorded and these streets existing, we don't want any access to Millersburg Drive because that's an arterial and we're trying to keep the access points off of Millersburg Drive. Now, to add one more layer onto that, the driveway that the applicant currently has coming off of Millersburg Drive could stay. That's nothing that we're going to run out as the big bad evil city and make him cut up and abandon and stop using. But the legal access to his property would be coming from the new street on the other side to the east. So it wouldn't really impact anybody until they went to further develop that. And we called the applicants in today and had a long conversation with them about this today, explained the subtle differences between these 2 sets of conditions, and they were okay with it, but they'll tell you that themselves when they give their testimony. So moving on to the rest of the criteria, the project can't preclude development of any neighboring properties. In this case, most of the neighboring properties have already developed, and so that's not really an issue, with the exception of Mr. Irish's property here to the northwest, and the design of this project doesn't preclude development on Mr. Irish's property next door. So it's consistent with this criteria. Oh, yeah. The project also has to have adequate utilities in the form of sewer and water available on the site. In this case, sewer and water are available both on Millersburg Drive for proposed parcels 1 and 2 on this project, and then to the south off of Sonora Drive for parcel number 3. And on top of that, they will gain additional access points for water and sewer when the new road comes in from West Valley Estates next door, and from the south, I can't remember the name of that subdivision, but this was a recently approved subdivision as well, and they'll have water and sewer connections to the south as well. So there's going to be plenty of opportunities for water connections. Additionally, the project cannot impact any drainage ways in any negative ways. Well, in this case, as you can see by the circle on the screen here, there is a drainage way going through this property. We sent this project to the Department of State Lands at the state to make sure that they were okay with that. They're the ones who implement water quality things moving forward. And they indicated as long as there was no ground disturbance at this time, they didn't have any comments on the project. When this applicant moves forward, they're going to, with any ground disturbance in this area, they're going to have to get concurrence from the Department of State Lands. To give the Planning Commission a comfort level, we added that as a condition of approval. It's kind of redundant because they would have to do it anyway, but at least there it's stated in the staff report that they would have to do that. But for now, this map isn't proposing any ground disturbing activities at all, so it's not going to have any impacts on that waterway in any way. The last criteria we have is the project can't emit any hazards. Well, in this case, it will eventually be single-family homes, which don't emit any kind of dangerous hazards, but in this case, they're not even proposing that. It's not proposing any ground disturbance or any construction at all, so there's no dangerous hazards that it's emitting, so it's consistent with that criteria requirement. So moving on, the project also has to comply with the standards in our code, and we're not going to go through those one at a time, but we did want to highlight a couple for the project today. As was mentioned before, the existing house is going to have to connect to water and sewer because the parcel that it's creating is going to be less than the zone permits to be rural, and therefore it's 7 acres, and therefore it's going to have to comply with the urban standards, which means it has to connect to water and sewer. You've all seen this, you're all familiar with this on the previous maps that we've done here, but we've added conditions of approval to the project requiring it to connect before it records. And as was mentioned before, there are some wetlands on the property, but this project isn't proposing any disturbance to those wetlands, so it's consistent with those standards. So with that, I have a memo I wanted to hand out to the commission. There was a couple of conditions of approval that we goofed on. In the body of the staff report, we mentioned a couple conditions that we were going to add, but I forgot to copy and paste those to the end of the staff report, added in with the conditions. So condition number 8 did include a previous draft of our condition in your staff report at the end, but I've revised it. And so what you're seeing here isn't new information. This was in your staff report, but the 2 bullet points you see here, A and B, were in the body of the staff report and didn't get transposed to the end. So it's just an error, a Scrivener's error, but wanted to make sure that that was highlighted. And with that revision in the conditions of approval, staff recommends approval of the application, subject to the conditions of approval. Myself and the applicant's representatives are available if you have any questions.
Thank you. Is the applicant here?
No, representing.
Would you like to come forward, please?
I think you would like to do, or
Well, do you have any comments you want to make?
I don't have any comments. I agree with the proposal.
And the applicant has agreed to all the conditions? Okay. Then there's no rebuttal, there's no public testimony, so we'll move forward.
Well, you can still open the floor if there's anybody else in the audience that wishes to speak.
Oh, anyone else wish to address this issue? Okay. Do you have any staff have any further comments or anything?
No, happy to answer any questions you might have.
Does the Plan Commission wish to ask any questions or anything? I mean, comments? Okay, then we're closing this part of the hearing.
I have a question. On page 7, on parcel 2, at the very end, it says a 25-foot width shown will not suffice. Now, I'm assuming that's the road coming off of Millersburg Drive.
Yeah, that was trying to argue that if that becomes a public street, it wouldn't suffice, so that they would have to show an easement on there that would be wide enough to suffice.
Well, when I look at the map, the actual map itself, if I can find it now, of course I can't, it shows only 12 foot.
Well, the map is on the screen here.
It says 12 feet existing.
Yeah, it says 12 foot existing.
25.
Well, that's, hang on.
There's an arrow up at the front corner that I think says 12.
Oh, 12
And
foot
it's back.
driveway?
Yep.
12
No,
foot
to your right,
driveway.
right by
and
the
it's-
160.
And it's pointing to that access,
Right here?
right, and then see how it's pointing up?
Well, I see 20.
Well, I took that to mean that there's actually a 12-foot curb cut there existing, but we can ask the engineer and see if they can elaborate on that for us.
So
Come on up to the
12 foot
microphone.
line.
You tried to avoid it.
Yeah, that's certainly.
Okay.
Yeah, I see that. And that's
Please.
the curb.
You know what she's talking about there?
Yeah, I do, yeah.
Hold on just a minute. Please state your name and then write your name.
Okay, Kyle Latimer with Udell Engineering. That address here. So the 12-foot driveway is just the actual driveway is constructed, which I think is gravel. It doesn't speak to the curb cuts or anything like that. The proposed width was 25 for the flag that is not being considered now. But the 12-foot is just the as-constructed road surface.
And is that what our city standard for a private road is?
Well, this wouldn't be a private road. This would be a shared driveway.
Okay.
So that's a little bit different. And our code does require 25 feet width minimum, but they're showing that, so they were compliant with that bit.
Okay, so the width of the actual asphalt or gravel doesn't matter?
The width of the curb cut for the private driveway, I'm not sure.
I would have to look to verify, but I believe it says right now, minimum 12 foot, maximum 24 foot.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, cool.
As long as the overall width for access is 25 feet. That's
Correct.
the main thing, right?
Yeah, it
Correct,
actually
yeah.
says a minimum 10 feet for residential. But that's for single, I don't know that that's for shared.
It's true.
What's going to happen with these streets from the other tracks? They're just going to dead end there?
Well, we added a condition of approval to those previous tracks saying that they had to put signage on there, but yeah, they will stop.
It's going to be a blunt dead end?
The fire department was okay with that. They didn't require any temporary turnarounds of any kind. They were okay with that based on the design of the streets,
And
but
that
we,
street can just turn into a driveway to go into Lot 2?
temporarily, yes.
Permanently?
Well, I suppose you're right,
you're hoping
permanently,
that
that's
that's
true.
gonna become a street
We're assuming
all
that's
the way
gonna further subdivide.
Okay.
But you're right. You're right. Until that further subdivides, it could become a driveway, that's correct.
So for us in recommending approval, are we locking them into one of those two options now? Or are those two options open for them?
That's a great question. It depends on when they record this map. If they tried to get on it really fast and record this map before those streets become dedicated, then the only choice they have is option one, because these streets don't technically exist at that point. So it depends on when they move forward.
Is Crooks Creek the northern border of parcel 3?
Yes.
I don't know the name, but yeah, the creek is.
And then the rest of it underneath, it's wetlands.
Correct.
So you're saying a motion for approval would cover both options?
Yes, yes indeed. And they would enact either one of those options depending on when they brought it in to do a final plat. That's right.
Just make sure we have to decide on one now.
Nope. Nope. We can leave it with options. As long as both of those options meet the criteria, and they do, then you're okay to move forward with the two options.
More question?
You may want to see if the audience has anything to say now, as a result of Mr. saying
Okay.
the audience has.
Does anyone from the audience wish to speak? Comments, questions?
That was my question.
Okay. I thought it actually closed.
If you want, I'd leave the record then you can go ahead and close it. If they want to make a motion to either approve it tonight, they can do that.
Okay. So I can entertain a motion then?
Well, you got to close the hearing first.
You got to close the hearing.
Okay. We'll close the hearing then.
And then you can see if there's any discussion among the members. If not, you get a non-action.
Okay. Is there any further discussion from the members? Okay, if not, then we will.
From my point, and that's, Connie asked the question earlier, it just doesn't make sense to me why if there's already an existing driveway that runs along the west side of parcel number 1, all the way down to the house there, why we would give them the second option to have it come off the road instead of.
Well, because our code says that, that we're supposed to not have access to an arterial. It says if you don't have any other options, you're allowed to move forward with access to an arterial. And right now, they kind of don't have any other options. But should that other road come in, not only is that another option, but it's a far superior option because now we can eliminate the access to Millersburg Drive. So that's why we wrote it in kind of a two-tiered fashion.
Okay.
But that parcel, that driveway will be part of parcel 2.
Well, we told the applicants earlier when we were meeting with them, if the final plat comes in after the street is dedicated, and they decided to eliminate this line altogether, and just have this come all the way over, we staff could argue that that substantially conforms to the original design and let it move forward that way. So they wouldn't have to worry about this cherry stem anymore, because it wouldn't serve any function at that point, especially because the water and sewer to connect would come through here and not up here, so it really wouldn't serve a function.
We'd like to see it go on, really.
Yeah, and then if the applicant decided he didn't want to use this as a driveway and his lot no longer included this, and he wanted to work with this owner to allow a deal between the two of them to continue using that until it subdivides again, the city, I don't think would have any heartburn with that.
Just as a point, that's what
So if the plan on the right was developed and then they still wanted to keep the driveway, would you recommend they not keep the driveway and go with the other option?
Well, no, in that point, what we would do is we'd make sure that the final plat showed where the proper legal access was. That way, when this further subdivided, any one of these parcels further subdivided, the legal access would then dictate where that next partition took its access from. But where they were really taking access from on the ground, if the owner of Lot 1 didn't care about that driveway being there, then I don't think the city would step in and stop them from using it.
If we approve this tonight, when does the house have to connect to water and sewer?
Before it records their final plat. And so they're in control of that. They have a year to do it, so it depends on when they want to move forward.
Well, that would have something to do with the direction they're going to go also.
Oh, certainly, you bet.
But that was just a question, had nothing to do with the yea or nay.
So my understanding right then, the actual driveway will be owned by parcel 2?
It depends on how they do it on the final plat. They might leave that driveway on the final plat the way you're seeing it right now, even if they're taking access from the subdivision to the east, and that's acceptable to city. But if they wanted to eliminate that altogether and leave all of that as parcel 1 and enlarge parcel 1 a little bit, the standard that we have when we review a final plat is it has to substantially conform to the approved project. Now that's a little bit of a fuzzy line, what substantially conforms and what doesn't. But moving this one line over and eliminating that driveway access, we feel is small enough that it would substantially conform, and we would stand behind that.
Would staff approve it at their level, or would?
Yeah, all final plats are done at the staff level. Well, city engineer, actually, she has to sign it.
That's what I would recommend.
So that didn't answer my question. The road is going to be owned by parcel 2, unless they do the change that you talked about and make it bigger.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct, yes. Yeah, if they record this before the subdivision gives us that road, then yes, that would be what they would do. The cherry stem would remain, and it would become a shared driveway for parcel 1. That's correct.
If they record after that road is done and they connect to water and sewer on that new road, and parcel 1 wants to build a house, can they then use that driveway off of Millersburg Drive?
No, sure couldn't.
Okay.
Sure couldn't.
So they're going to have to find a way to get access through property on parcel 2 to get to their property.
Correct. Well, that's where their legal access would be on the map. And so we wouldn't let them do any more curb cuts. But unofficially, if,
Well, no, if that line moved over, there's an existing curb cut.
correct, but in the event that this if they record this after this street comes in,
Right.
and he now has to take legal access from here, so does parcel one, has to take legal access from here, then we're not gonna go over and be the curb cut police and make them fill this in.
No, but where will lot one's driveway be if he wants to build a house on the front of that property? On the northern end of that property? Is he gonna have to come in off of that road?
His legal access would be through here.
Yeah, that's what the 3 arrows.
Now, if this guy wanted to work with this guy and continue to use this unofficially, that driveway exists, we probably wouldn't go out there and shut them down, but his legal access would come through here. And they can design, like I showed those arrows, they can design the legal access coming in any way they want, as long as it connects.
So at some point, there's gonna have to be an access easement across parcel 2.
Oh, absolutely, and they're aware of that. Because the owner of parcel 2 understands that someday, probably someday soon, the parcel 2 is going to further subdivide. And it probably won't be a partition, it'll probably be a subdivision. And so all the relationship between this existing structure and the house will probably be moot, because this will probably become a lot unto itself right there, and so on and so forth, when that further subdivides. Not that that's before us tonight to review, but that's certainly something we look at, because it's one of the criteria. We have to make sure that they can further divide that in the future if it's over 10,000 square feet. So that's something we try to look at. But really, the easement that we're putting here is really a signal to this future owner and this future owner that when they subdivide in the future, they're gonna have to take access from here. They can't come in up here at all. And we're trying to make that very crystal clear to that future owner.
That's where I was going. with
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Any more comments, questions?
Just use.
Then we'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion that we approve PA 18-06 with recommended conditions.
Staff report? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, the staff report.
Okay, we have a motion,
Second.
and we have a second. Any questions? I'll call for a vote then. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Well, we'd like to thank everyone for their comments tonight. If anyone chooses to appeal this, they have 15 days to appeal to the city council. And does the staff have any comments they want to make before we close the meeting?
No, one of the commissioners asked a question just as a matter of interest, if this would be the kind of partition that staff may elect to bounce up to the planning commission if the new code went forward like we talked about last night. And my answer was yes, this would be one that I would bring to you as a body, because I feel it's not very straightforward and had some complicating factors to it. So this would be a good example of one I would likely bump up. But the one we did last time, the Taylor partition, would not be one that I would bring to you because it was so straightforward. But that was a great question, and I thought I'd share that with everybody else.
Questions, comments? We're adjourned.